Very great pleasure to introduce John Koldowski, who is the Deputy CEO of Plata, and I think you're all familiar with John. He is really the driving force behind the Strategic Intelligence Center, and without further ado, I'd like to welcome John Koldowski to the stage, your moderator.
We often have a saying that if you don't know me, introduce yourself, and if you do, run like heck. My name's John Koldowski. I work for Plata. Today, breakout session number 4, changing demographics. And yeah, that sounds like, oh, that's hard work. It's statistics, it's numbers, it's this sort of thing. But if we take a leaf out of Richard Quest from this morning, for those of you that were there, as he called them earlier, the black arts, demographics, the black arts. But he also made the very astute observation that without an understanding of demographics and how they are changing, all other elements within the tourism supply and delivery chain cannot work as optimally as they should. And what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at exactly that. We're going to have a look at and try and understand demographics, how they are changing, and how they influence the tourism supply and delivery chain. And we have a very august body of gentlemen here. We have Dr. Clint Laurent, who is the owner and founder of Global Demographics. Clint. We have Mr. Joe Nguyen from Comscore, the Vice President indeed of Comscore in the centre. And on the end we have Mr. Ross Jackson, who is the head of Cross-Border Business International with Visa International. So what we have today is an ability to glance into changing demographics at the physical or geographic level with Clint. But then we can move to the online space with Joe, this ethereal area where a lot of activity is taking place. And then with Ross, we can look at someone who both generates and uses demographics in both overlays, in developing business models and developing business. So it's a very unique trio, I think we could say, in terms of understanding demographics, their change, and their impact on the business environment. But to begin with, we're going to start with the more physical side of demographics, and I'll now ask Dr. Clint Laurent to step to the podium and begin your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Clint Laurent.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And if I can go forward. There we go. Right, I'm going to just, in the space of 10 minutes, just try and give you an idea of how the world's populations are changing. Because you really should think about the world and not Asia. I mean, I know you're in Asia, I know it's a Pacific Area Travel Association, etc. But remember, a lot of your business comes from outside Asia into Asia, so it's actually quite important you understand what's happening. And there's actually some big demographic shifts happening in the world, and they have huge implications for your business opportunities over the next few years. And can I also prefix my comments by saying I agree with everybody who's ever said it that China and India have great growth prospects. I don't disagree with that. But I'd also suggest to you that don't let that be the only game in town. There are some very significant games emerging elsewhere in the world, and in fact I'd suggest to you bigger games, and you should at least keep your eyes open to those potentially emerging because they have huge profit upsides for you. Okay, the first thing that I just want to quickly touch on is just how the age profiles of the world are changing. This slide very simply shows you the proportion of the population. Blue is 0 to 14, red is 15 to 24, etc. through to the old. And you can see it's really quite different, but there's two really important points that come out of this slide. The really wealthy regions of the world, which is North America, affluent Asia, which is Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, etc., and Western Europe are basically old areas. Over half those populations or more are over the age of 40. Then The other thing to really take from this is China and India have very different age profiles. Half of China's population is already over the age of 40 as well, whereas India is a very young population with over half the population under the age of 25. So you can't compare those two markets because they're actually very different in terms of the type of consumer and the stage and life cycle that they're at. Now let's just quickly look at how those life cycles are changing. First of all, just total population change. Big thing that a lot of people don't realize is India and Africa are really the regions where most of the population growth is happening. The other thing a lot of people don't realize is China is already facing a declining population. China is not a growth market in terms of the number of people. Your growth in China in the future is getting more customers, the same amount of customers, if you like, to come to you more often and spend more money. Where in India, where it adds 15 million kids a year, you can just stand still in terms of share, but your market will still grow. It's a totally different marketing proposition as well. So that's the first key point that comes out of this. The next key one is look at what's happening in working age population, because this affects your labor supply issue. Everyone's heard about the cost of labor in China going up. A lot of people are expressing surprise. And yet we were telling them 10 years ago that come 2008, the labor force in China stops growing. It's getting up, increasing in education, it's increasing in productivity, but the number of bodies of 15 to 64 years of age is now declining, and therefore there's going to be competition for wages. And it's taking place, and it's actually really good because the labor force share of productivity in China is the lowest in the world. 40% of the GDP goes to the labor force in China. It's typically 60 or 70% elsewhere. So labor's increasing bargaining power will actually cause household incomes to go up rather than just the GDP itself. So it actually has quite an important implication there. The other important implication is Western Europe and affluent Asia, because they also have, if you like, relatively static labor forces now. So there's two big issues. How can they either maintain or grow their labor force, or two, how can they increase the productivity of the labor force? In terms of growing or expanding the labor force, it's taking place. Retirement age in 10 years' time will be 69. Already it's 65 in most countries. In 10 years' time it'll be 69 and probably go on to 74. And that is possible because those countries have a good nutritional history, people can work longer, and therefore they are actually in the ability to keep earning. So the labor force will keep going. The other phenomenon happening is the older woman, and I'm choosing my word very carefully here, meaning women over the age of 45, so no women here can meet that criteria.
That's rude.
They're returning to the labour force. In all of these countries, the educational differential was very small between them. Women and men were equally likely to come out of university 15, 20 years ago, but it just they didn't go into the workforce quite so much. That attitude has changed, so they're coming in as well. So the labour forces in all those countries will keep growing. But the other thing is a country like Japan, for example, which has a lot of money, has a great research industry, and has a relatively flat labour force, robotics is growing dramatically. And you should not underestimate the impact of robotics on the demand for labour force in those countries where the labour force is growing very, very rapidly. There could not be people talk about it as a demographic dividend. We actually call it a demographic liability because it can have a huge number of people who can't be employed because the robotics are taking over those sorts of jobs. So just a warning in terms of that opportunity. I'm going quite fast because I want to get through some of these things. Retired population, I put this up here because this is your competitor, actually. The big market I'll show you in a minute is affluent older people, i.e. people over the age of 45. They're the ones who have discretionary money. And a particular growth segment is affluent people over the age of 64. Now, in the Western countries in North America, they actually have a very high disposable income because they have a provident fund, they have a health network operating, so and their house is paid for. So the need to save actually isn't quite so high. China has a huge number of older people coming online, so to speak. They've had a great earnings history, they've been a great saver, but those savings are under threat. A family in China only has to have one person catch hepatitis and it wipes out their savings, just like that. China has very high emphysema cases, it has very high high blood pressure cases, a lot of cancer cases. So you are competing in China with the health industry for the dollar. The average Chinese person is thinking, do I have enough money in my savings to look after our health when we get older? And they may not spend on the travel issue quite so much because of that. So just be aware you have some other competition in this market in that respect. Okay, where's the money? Well, I'm actually going to skip that and go on to this chart. And I'm going to go one more because I don't want to take up all the time. But here's a little bit of a shocker for you. This is on we cover 72 countries, so it's about, in actual coverage, we're covering 92% of the world's GDP and 87% of the world's population. So these numbers are based on that. We're largely missing Central Africa. Of the total spend of households on recreation, 62% of it comes from 3% of households. And then the next big group is, if you like, 15 to, the green one, the 15 to 30,000 US dollar. Well, there's the blue one as well, obviously 50 to 100. But the green one is the other one that's showing some growth. But really, it's a very uneven market. Half the money rests with about 3% of the households in the sector. Why is that happening? Because basically, when you get to 100,000 US, all the other things are being paid for, and you have money left over for experiences, for doing things, all of that. So a higher proportion of the household budget goes on recreation. When you're on when you're on 10,000 US dollars, there's lots of other things competing for your recreation dollars. So the percentage that goes on recreation is actually quite low. So my first big message to you is you've got a big growth market, but just be aware that a very significant amount of the market is in the hands of a relatively small number of consumers. It's a growing number of consumers, it's growing in affluence. Are you gaining a good position in it? It's probably easier to sell to a small number of people a high value package than a large number of people a small value package. And again, you've got to think about the economics of that for your business. Where are the rich? Well, here's the 100,000 grid. If you like, and the circle on your respective lefts, North America, Western Europe, and affluent Asia basically account for 92% of the location of those people. China and India don't even show on this chart. They just sort of sneak in 10 years' time. So again, the half the market is actually in 3 areas of the world, and they are not China or India at this point in time. If you move down 50 to 100, that's still dominant. You see the others starting to appear. But here's the other big opportunity, the 15 to 50,000. This is catching what I call the top end of the China market. 15,000 US is roughly 90,000 renminbi, depending on the exchange rate and using the bank, but the ballpark. 90,000 renminbi in China is the magic number. Once a household goes over 90,000 renminbi, first of all, as you've noticed, they buy a car. And they park it on the road because everyone else is parked on the road. So 90,000 RMB is when they seriously think about an overseas holiday. Under that, they go for a domestic holiday. 90,000 RMB, they own all the toys in the sense of a washing machine, refrigerator, DVD. And 90,000 RMB in China is typically over the age of 45, because the income is actually slightly biased that way, and the kids are off their hands. For the first time, here's a couple in China, it can be a couple in Beijing, they've got the one kid, they've worked hard, they've saved their money, their income has gone up quite nicely, 6–7% per annum. They've got to 90,000, and at the same time the kids left and got married. So now they've got 90,000 RMB divided by 2, instead of 60,000 RMB divided by 3 a few years ago. That's 45,000 RMB each. Their disposable income has gone up dramatically. Now, as I said, yes, they're saving, but yes, now they're looking for ways to spend that money. And so, really, that's the target group in China, is that high-end market, relatively speaking, and reasonably concentrated. But before you get too excited about it, let's just put some numbers on it. I mean, the number of households in China, and the figures on there, it's the, sorry, my aging eyes, there's 12 million households right now earn over 90,000 RMB in China, all of China, and by 2020, just 10 years' time, it's 88 million households. So it grows very dramatically, but it's actually a relatively small number in the context of China. 12 million to 88 million. 12 million, not much bigger than London, if you like, and not as rich as London. So just keep it in proportion, but huge growth potential. The other thing to appreciate about this money in China is it's all located in less than 100 cities. There's 700 odd urban areas in China with over 200,000 people in them. Of those 700, 100 account for just on 82% of those households. So it's a very focused distribution. You don't need to cover all of China to reach these people. India is the same. I won't go into the same detail, but 5 cities of India will account for the equivalent market, about 70% of the equivalent market in India. So again, you focus your distribution to a relatively small group of these countries, which is growing very rapidly. I'm going as fast as I can, John. Okay, the 5 to 15, it's China and India, but probably you won't make money out of that. I think the 5 to 15,000 market is the domestic travel market in those respective countries, rather than the international travel business in those countries. So if you're a domestic operator in China, great news. If you're outside China, probably hard for you to get to. Okay, so I think I've used up my 10 minutes fairly rapidly there. Sorry about that. But my key messages to you are the aging of the population is changing quite dramatically. Money is also older, and even in China, the money is older. India, yes, great potential. Caveats in terms of India. The trouble is, every worker in India supports 2 other people. I mean, 50% of households in China don't have a child in them anymore. Every household in India pretty much has at least 1 and generally 3 children in it. So their ability to save and the ability to spend money on recreation is not as good as it is in China. So again, treat it as a different market. I'm sure there's opportunities in it, but it's a different market. It's young, it's a young family market, it's a bit like that. Now I've skimmed over, sorry John, but I'll hold this head. I've skimmed over, but don't forget them. Indonesia, growth economy. Malaysia is getting to the point where it's transited from what you call a developing economy to an affluent economy. It's just aging up there. So it's very wealthy. It's relatively young because it tends to have a high birth rate, but it's definitely getting there. There's a huge opportunity in terms of Malaysia now. Vietnam, relatively poor, but it's nice little rich segments in there, around there. And Philippines, of course, is chugging along quite nicely as well. You shouldn't ignore those markets because they actually do have growth potential. And then finally, just the percentages versus absolutes. Again, we're going to use China versus Japan. Everyone talks about China growing at 8, 9%. 8% of an average household income of $5,000 gives you $400 of extra money. Japan grows at 1%, an average household income is $70,000, which is $700 US more money. So the Japanese actually have been growing their absolute income faster than the average Chinese. So look at absolutes as well as percentages. Investment bankers love to talk to you about percentages because they can get your money off you and you'll invest it. But look at the absolutes. In Western Europe, North America, and Japan, the absolute spend on recreation by those areas is much greater than the rest of the world. So you really should look at that as well. Okay, it's pretty quick. But
it's very good, Clint, and thank you indeed for that. You while walking around, I was trying to read the numbers and I couldn't do it from back there. That's why I came forward. But you've given me 2 shocks, and I'm sure that the audience as well, at least 2 shocks. The first one being that, well, you know, China and India, it's not the only game in town. There's some real growth in real terms in other markets. That's one, like, you know, wild. The fact that 3% of households generates the bulk of the recreation spend is another eye-opener. And in fact, there's a third one there that I'm not sure if I'm happy or not, but according to you, the new old is over 40.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So I am not alone. That's really So now we'd like, obviously we're staying on the same subject, but we're moving into the, as I said before, the ethereal realm of cyberspace and see whether or not demographic shifts and demographic structures are the same or what nuances come to play there. And to talk to us about that, please welcome Joe Nguyen from Comscore, the VP of Comscore Inc. Joe, if you will, please.
Thank you. Sorry, that's an old picture of me. My hair is different these days. Yeah, so I'm going to start talking about this, but I've never seen your presentation before. And some of the numbers actually do match up. So it's quite, that's good. So, you know, we're both right. Right, so Comscore, just a very quick one. We're a market research company for online audience measurement. We operate, worldwide. In most markets, we're the currency for online advertising for publishers. So publishers like CNN, MSN, all that stuff, they buy our stuff to actually understand their demographics. And travel clients as well. So I would make my trip to all those guys actually do get our stuff for insights. Enough about the boring stuff. We're going to play some trivia. Right? I think I'm going to step down just because I prefer to walk around and I might trip on stage. All right. Which region currently has the most internet users? North America, Asia Pac, or Europe? Who says A? North America. Asia Pac? Europe. Okay, that's an easy one. It's Asia Pac. Right? So Asia Pac is 40% of the online market. I mean, a lot of that stuff is China. And then we do make up a good chunk, 40% of the internet population. Year on year, the internet still grows. It's still a growing market, especially in this part of the world. In the West and everything, it's sort of slowed down. I also took a look at travel sites in general, so growth of travel sites year over year. So comparing February of 2010 to February 2011, there's an 18% increase worldwide of people going to travel sites. So there's anything from OTA to airlines to hotels. Okay, next one. Which region currently has the most share of visitors to travel sites? We're talking share. Right? North America? Asia? Europe? Geez, Simone, you cheated. I think you saw this the other day. The total internet, so this is what we looked at just now. It's 41% Asia Pac, but within travel, North America actually is number 2. Europe, 36% of people going to travel sites come from Europe. 27% come from North America, Asia Pacific 26%. So we have the most users online, but of the 3, we're the lowest in terms of people going to travel sites. Right, so Asians aren't really going to travel sites today. In which country do travel sites have the highest reach, as in share of that country's population, right? Easy one, United States, UK, a few hands there, New Zealand. It's the United Kingdom. 67% of people online in the United Kingdom will go to a travel site during the month. New Zealand's actually number 2 at 60%, right? And the United States is 58%. Singapore, we see over there. Not much else to do in Singapore. Everywhere you go, you're going to be, jumping to another country. So Singapore is right up there as well. This is the top sites. The top countries. Looked at it in a bit, diving down into a bit more, just for February to reach of the travel category. Again, Philippines is only 26%, Germany's 54%, India's 40%, Hong Kong. This 40% in India is actually, a lot of it is to Indian railways, right? Once they opened up their online portal, geez, they have the highest traffic there, where you can actually book for your rail ticket online. New Zealand's high as well, and in various markets here. So people, Vietnam's quite low. Worldwide, who has more reach? Airlines, OTAs, or hotels and resort sites? Airlines? OTA? Hotels? Right, it's actually the OTAs. Right, they're everywhere, they brand themselves, they're advertised across the internet, they get the traffic, right? Hotels, we do a bit of advertising, we do a lot of search and all those kind of things. Airlines, but everyone wants to compare. right? This is, this is now the internet. And, everyone likes to figure out who's got the better deal, who's got the cheapest deal, and so they're going to go to OTAs and just look. They may not necessarily buy, but they'll look, right? And the interesting one up here is obviously travel information. So that includes the TripAdvisor, so we don't count as an OTA. It includes the NTO sites and all the tourist sites and all that kind of stuff as well. It's a larger catch-all of information. Which low-cost carrier has highest number of online visitors? Tiger Air? AirAsia? Jetstar? It's AirAsia. By far. There's the growth numbers. They grew 51% year over year, 226% in Tiger Air. Jetstar is 14% growth. Cebu and all those guys have grown as well. So in Asia Pac, AirAsia.com is the top airline site, above Singapore Air, Cathay Air, anyone else.
And technology, and they'll leapfrog cards. They won't ever see one of these. They'll actually use payments using that, mobile phones. We've heard a lot about mobile phones. So we use demographics to develop where we're heading as a business. We use it to develop our products. We use it to help profiling and support our clients, the banks and the merchants, to understand better risk and how we can make transactions secure. We use demographics a lot when we actually say, how do we better support our clients and you, the customers and cardholders? So many of you sit there as merchants, as in the travel industry, but also as cardholders yourselves. So whether it's making the transactions, the authorization of transactions when people travel seamless, make their holidays go without interruption, how do we do that? So we use demographics in all these ways. So I come to a presentation like this, and part of me sort of goes into the marketing side of the demographics, and I guess that's where we'll keep the conversation. But it's important to know that in order to focus a large business, as you know, information is the key, demonstrated ably by these two gentlemen. And it is the use of really refined demographics that makes the ROI in our business go best. So how do we map that out? You'll see, I was sort of, looking at these gentlemen. We've got a doctor here and we've got a vice president here. I get the longest title, but it's just because no one knows what I do. And cross-border is actually about the transactions made outside of your home market. So it's the transactions made outside of the country in which you live. So how do we grow that market for ourselves? Well, we have competitors, but the one competitor that, if you're talking to people in the card industry, that everyone will talk about is cash. Cash, there's an entire shift away from cash for convenience, for security. If we look in the space that we're just describing here, if we look at the online capability, the social networking, the ability to empower transactions online doesn't come with coins and notes. And so, we have created, through an understanding of demographics, everything in our strategy, right down to CyberSource, which is a company which we acquired a short time ago, which actually makes online payments secure and enables them and brings added value to merchants. So as we look at cross-border transactions, we look at the end customers, we go to our clients first. We go to tourism boards, NTOs, sometimes, and we have obviously relationships with some, not all. And we can actually trace what is happening in a market. We can take that down from our general research about customers and what they intend to spend when they travel. You've seen the PARTA reports that we publish together on future spending and travel intentions. We bring that together with our own data, and our own data, as I said, steps back from individual clients, but it shows us where the transactions are going, which corridors are growing, what the average ticket size spending is going, how categories are improving in terms of the penetration into cash. So we use all of that to really review what we call this path to purchase, which is what are people doing on the planning and booking stage? What are people doing when they travel, from airport through on airlines and then landing at the other end? How many of them want to use cash? How do they access that cash? we can actually map out each of those stages and understand how card products penetrate that and where we should focus. And then at the other end, there is an area which is about putting the customer first, which is when they finish and complete the trip and they go and load up their photos to social networking and influence in their experience. So we map all that out against what is being spent at each individual part of the way in cash and how we can help the consumer. We build our products around that, we build our marketing strategies around that, and we certainly help our clients understand their portfolios as well as they can to make sure that they are honouring the customer's needs as best they can. So that's really a description of how we use demographics across the business.
Thank you, Ross, and you do so very, very well. So I think there's a lesson for us there that you know, even though demographics may sound a little bit dry and dusty, when you actually apply them correctly to your business, you can actually improve your targeting, and ultimately, I think, as we were discussing before, Ross, you can improve the ROI.
That's right. I mean, you get out of just looking at, and as we were hearing before, you get out of looking at just, there is a shift from, you know, of this rising middle income group and so forth, and being shifted to have a strategy around that. You actually get a bit more granular and start building your strategies about what will really count and where you'll get the value from. And as we use our information and research against the NTO, NTOs are often looking at, we don't just want any traveller, we want the high value travellers. And we can see also that, you know, if you look at portfolios of our, you know, clients and their customers, you can see that statistic of recreation travel being in a very, very small group playing out. And it's been very easy for us to say, oh, cross-border is about everyone who has a card. But there is a group that recurs. So when we see the outbound travel numbers, they're not necessarily unique outbound travellers. They are recurring outbound travellers, and they have business needs and have leisure needs. And so unless we understand that, then we're taking a wrong broad message to a very broad audience.
Indeed. I like also your observation about how in some markets there's a leap over credit cards, so that they're just going into phones. We saw that in India, where there was virtually a jump over the land systems or the line systems, landline systems, and straight into mobile.
Yeah, there's some great examples in Africa as well.
Really?
Yeah, and you know, you don't need copper wires or fibre optics or whatever and all that investment. And you know, you see great photos of people who, in Africa, who got no technologies at all except a cell phone. And that is a future for a lot of people. But you know, coming back to the travel industry, I think, you know, what we're seeing by focusing on these groups, our conversations with tourism boards, our conversations with the hotel groups that we meet with and others, it just helps them focus as well. For some, it's even entering new markets. It's just learning about the corridors that we've got the maximum value. So that's how we're able to bring that and actually share it with our merchant customers and our banks.
Good point. I've got a whole bunch of questions here, but hey, you know, this is going to be interactive. So does anyone out there have a question of any of our three panelists? Yes, sir. Way.
I have a question, but I try to do it in a political correct way. Visa, one of the biggest financial organizations in the world. You use this information on demographics for your own market targets. How you think that Visa could influence this over the market outside the country of origin, which a big part of it is tourism actually. How do you think Visa could influence having a kind of stream of spending towards some new forms of tourism, towards some niche markets that they deserve a better recognition? I mean, do you have the tools? Do you intend? Do you think that Visa could promote some destinations or promote some products within a destination that are responsive to specific demographics?
Yeah, well, we can certainly help enable that. So I'm not sure what we mean by niche markets, but we can identify it, we can enable it, and as I said before, we can work with the financial institutions that we support to develop products and services that meet those needs. Without understanding fully the sort of niche markets and development that you're looking at, you mentioned the promotion of destinations. We know a lot about what corridors are performing and so forth, but I mean, we aren't looking at trying to usurp the role of our client banks or NGOs. Certainly we wouldn't do that, but if we can help enable better knowledge and better learnings for these groups, happy to engage and have the conversation. We're quite active in that. When we sponsor a FIFA and Olympics, we publish data on during those events of what's happening, and there are other ways that we take that information and help bodies apply it. But specifically, we can be an enabler in that conversation. But the people who would meet the sort of product delivery and so forth would be our financial institutions or the merchants that we work with.
John, how large is that panel?
We're coming close to 3 million people worldwide that we track.
3 million people worldwide on a panel. Now, the researchers in the audience will understand that if you're going to make generalisations about a country or something like that, you normally need 300 to 500 in a sample, something of that order of magnitude. So you imagine 3 million people. Geography doesn't come into it so much anymore, does it? But Joel, I'd like to ask you a question. How integrated do you see the demographics of the online world with that of the physical?
I think it varies by market. The more mature markets where internet penetration is high, then it reflects the market. But if you, the example before was Japan, internet penetration is quite high, so you get very much reflective of the general population. You look at India, it's a whole different world. It's in those markets, developing markets, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, China, it's the younger people that get online first. And by young, I mean, below 40.
Okay.
I'm coming to 40. I'm coming to 40, so I'm still saying I'm still young. But as the workforce, right? They're getting access online, so they're coming online. Do they actually have it at home? Not necessarily. And in the more rural areas of the developing markets, they just don't have access yet. DSL's not there and all that stuff. So those are still developing markets, and so it's skewed. I mean, in India, if you're online, you're actually probably making a lot of money, because you're part of that working class that actually, are able to access the internet. And then as we move into mobile internet, that's a whole different thing. It's very young skewed, right? So that's, I was in Hong Kong in a train, and you go to Hong Kong, you look around in a train, 4 out of 5 people are using iPhones, doing stuff with it, and they're all below, 40. The one person that was not below 40 that was using a phone was an old guy, 55 years plus, on his phone talking. Everyone else was just playing around with it.
Clint, what's your take on that? How do you see the integration in the online demographic world with that of the physical?
But obviously, it would be hard for me to disagree with Joe given the size of the sample. So I do actually agree with Joe. I mean, the only other add-on I've put onto that is people have a perception that older people are not so tech-savvy. That's just simply not true. Old people are equally tech-savvy. Remember, computers came in 25 years ago, actually 30 years ago. Most people over 60 have worked with a computer at least 20 years. So you shouldn't make the assumption that older people are computer literate.
Good point.
And one of the things we do measure is internet penetration. And I mean, at the moment, Western Europe, which has got a reasonably old population, has one of the highest penetration rates right across. And I read the other day that the UK is now the highest or something like that. Agree with your views?
The highest in terms of
internet penetration for high speed. And that's been 75, 80%. That's quite old.
Quite
So you can reach them. I mean, it's a great way of self-selecting the market. As Joe was saying, you're reaching the affluent in the less developed countries by definition. It's a very efficient distribution.
From an advertising perspective in the UK, digital advertising, online advertising has surpassed TV last year. There's more money being spent online than on TV and advertising.
So there's a lot happening out there pretty fast. Demographic shifts at the sort of geographic area, they're a bit slow, aren't they?
Normally, yeah.
Normally.
I mean, China is an exception because of the one-child policy. It created a bit of a cliff in terms of the way its population changes quite dramatically. In most other countries, it's a reasonably steady trend. You can actually forecast it. But I think the change in attitudes on top of the change in demographics tends to be a bit faster. People are actually, you've got, I mean, in the space of 30 years, you've now got an older generation who typically will have completed secondary school, just got university. So you've actually got a big social change as well as a, if you like, a physical change in that audience. So they're much more active. Never underestimate the impact of education on consumption behavior. And it's fortunately going up throughout the world, but it has caused a lot of social change because people are both better educated and more academically activated.
Questions? Your chance again. Yes, Alex.
If you had to benchmark top 3 travel organizations that use demographics effectively, who would they be?
Well, all the pressure's on now.
Well, it's a hard one to answer because I mean, my answer.
Other than Visa, of course.
Yeah. Well, my answer would be a function of who my clients are, so I really can't independently. Yeah, I mean, but as a group, I would have to say the hotels are our biggest travel group of clients collectively. Airlines not so much. I would have expected airlines to be bigger because of their big capital investment. But they're not. The hotels are.
From my sector, I'd say the online travel agents,
So then
OTAs.
no money, no
If you look at the Expedias and those guys, they it's all online. They want to know the online demographics and all that stuff, and they target, they retarget. They're really using all the online tools they can.
So I'm a small SME in tourism, starting up. I want to learn about the market. How do I begin? What's the first couple of steps that I should take?
Starting an MBA course here. Sorry.
Well, let me come in on top of that and say that because we are running short of time, that we've created a link for you here. You have 3 gentlemen. So you have the opportunity to collar them at afternoon tea or in the closing ceremonies, etc. You know the links. You will see some of these slides being posted on our website and so forth. Make use of them, contact them, speak to them, get the information you need, specific information, and use it to your best advantage. Demographics are not dusty and boring. They're pretty darn exciting if you think about what they mean in a real business and competitive sense.
Yes.
But we're in the closing stages now, so I'd like to call Barbara back to the podium, please, to go through that formal process. But from me in particular, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for an extremely interesting 1 hour. Thank you.